Hello, beautiful beings. Welcome to Soul Shift Messages. If you found your way here, trust there's something in this message for you. Understand this space is about growth, truth, and transformation. We don't bypass here, we don't sugarcoat, and not every message will feel comfortable, but it will be honest. I speak in flow, and sometimes that includes cussing. It's just part of how the messages come through. Take what resonates, leave what doesn't, and trust your own discernment above all else. Take a deep breath, and let's begin. If you are new here, please know at this time I create weekly content in 3 parts. Part 1 focuses on what needs to be revealed. Part 2 focuses on what needs to be understood, and Part 3 focuses on what needs to be done. What action do we need to take to embody whatever we happen to be discussing for that week? Based on when you see this video, you will see all available links to the content in the series in the description box below. If it's not available yet, just know it's on its way. All right, I say all of that to say this is going to be part 2 for this week's topic. And this week's topic is fear. I am calling this message, we need to stop organizing life around fear. And babies, you'll have to forgive me. I don't know why they want me to talk about this. I'll keep it short before I dive in. Some of you may be sleeping more. And if you're feeling called to get more rest, even if you're not sleeping, like if you just feel called to get more rest, you're being asked to honor that. And I'm kind of giggling about it because I got like a normal amount of sleep for me last night. And I am not joking when I say I was up for no longer than an hour and a half before I had to lay back down. I did not have any caffeine. I didn't even get a chance to eat breakfast. I was gonna try to eat breakfast, and I was actually told no, to just skip it and go lay down. So I basically woke up, did a check-in with my team. They didn't say I was gonna nap, but I was feeling like pretty groggy for someone who got a normal amount of sleep. And then when I went to go eat breakfast, they just said, no, drink your water, take your supplements and go lay down. And I shit you not, it wasn't even 10 o'clock. Like I don't even think it was that far into 9 a.m. And I'm not joking when I say when I woke up and I actually like looked at my clock, it was 1:10 in the afternoon. And I was just like, what the fuck is this? So yeah, I am recording this. It is 4:01 p.m. I have been up for not even 3 hours. And, it hasn't all been a loss. I got everything cleaned up from breakfast. I made some lunch. I had my morning tea at 2 p.m. with lunch. And I'm now on my second load of laundry. So it's not a total waste, but I'm not gonna lie, I actually feel like I could have to lay down again after I finish recording this. So I'd like to say I'm with the program now, but I gotta be honest, I don't actually know what the program is. I'm definitely not running this show today. I am just trying to work with it. So some of you that may resonate, it may not. But again, if you're just being called to rest, even if it's just to sleep more, there's a big purpose behind that, and they're just saying you don't have to have all the details. They're really just asking you to trust and fall in line with that. So how that's gonna play out for the rest of my day, I have no idea, but I just had to laugh because just for someone who's had between 11 and like 13 hours of sleep, I wish I could say I'm like more well rested than I actually am. So we'll just see how it goes. So I don't know. I have to assume that's for someone, but let's get into it. Again, this message is called We Need to Stop Organizing Life Around Fear. Let's get into it. Fear is one of the mind's natural protective abilities. It is not inherently good or bad. Its original purpose is to detect danger, sharpen awareness, prepare the body for action, and help preserve life. In its proper role, fear is a messenger. It alerts you to what may require attention, caution, or protection. The problem begins when fear stops being a temporary response to danger and becomes a permanent way of seeing the world. What begins as a useful survival instinct gradually transforms into a complete way of thinking, feeling, interpreting events, relating to other people, and understanding yourself. Fear then stops serving life and begins organizing life around itself. This message describes that entire transformation from fear's healthy purpose to its most destructive form and the path back toward balance. Fear begin. Oh, yeah, I have orange nails. I don't know how they're gonna show up, but yeah, I did a post. I like orange nails. Apparently somebody wants to see my nails. There you go, babies. That's my go-to color. I don't know. I had an older lady tell me, but red is classic. And I just smiled sweetly and said, yeah, for everyone else. Like, I don't know. It's never been my thing. But not that I don't appreciate a red nail. I'll do it like once a year. But I don't know. Orange seems to fit me better. All right, let's get back to it. Fear begins with separation. Fear often begins when something that once felt safe, meaningful, trustworthy, or whole no longer does. This may happen through betrayal, grief, disappointment, trauma, loss, painful realization, broken trust, witnessing cruelty, recognizing that life cannot always be controlled. The first effect is not panic, it is separation. Maybe some of you may recognize this as fragmentation, and that is an accurate deduction. There's different words for similar things here, but yes, there's separation. It can also be interpreted as fragmentation. Both are accurate. A person begins feeling disconnected from themselves, other people, the world, or the meaning they once believed existed. Something that once felt sacred, trustworthy, or alive begins feeling damaged, corrupted, or hostile. Fear therefore begins not only with danger, but with a broken relationship to reality. And babies, this isn't to install fear in anybody, instill any fear. I'm not about that over here. This is really about bringing this to your awareness. This is not the first time I have talked about fragmentation on this channel. If you watched the internal gridlock playlist, I talked about it there. If you watched the integrity playlist, I talked about it there. This is really about bringing those separated or fragmented pieces of yourself back in, reintegrating them. Because again, really, the more I'm on this journey, the more I realize the end goal is to get back to a state of wholeness. And that's just something that cannot be done overnight. It's really a lifelong process. And so I don't want someone to think that, oh, there's something wrong with me. If I'm not in a state of wholeness, how can I find joy here? It's none of that. It's a lifelong thing. All right. And they're really saying they don't want you to hyper focus on this. Again, it's to bring it to your attention so that, we can feed your subconscious mind a different perspective, a different way of looking at things that can support you with bringing these pieces back together. All right. We don't have to be perfect to have joy here. If that was a criteria, that would literally be impossible for us to meet. Right? So it's really about balancing. I don't know why. I just feel like someone really needs to hear, like, you need to balance this journey with actually participating in this experience and finding joy in it. Right? You can do both. You can be capable of both. You can go through hard times and still find moments of joy. I'm going through some very significant energetic upgrades right now. And I know it sounds silly, but part of the reason why I had to go get my nails done, and I got this color on my toes too, is because this is one of the small things that actually makes me happy. I love this color. You can't see it on the camera, but there's little like gold shimmers in it. It's a beautiful color. It really makes me happy. And these energetic upgrades can be really intense for me. I can be really tired. I can sometimes have a hard time eating. Sometimes I can't really even get out of my house much. And so, I know part of the reason why my ancestors put boot to ass to get me to go get my nails done, because this is going to be one of the things that really helps while I'm going through this, and it makes something that's difficult a little more enjoyable for me. And is it going to last forever? No, I don't do gel manicures. That's just me. But, I will enjoy it for the time that I have it. And I also know, because this isn't my first rodeo, that these big energetic upgrades, they don't last forever. They eventually work themselves out, they plateau, and I get used to the new baseline. All right, but it's important to really balance both of these out, because otherwise I'm hearing lost in the sauce. You can really get lost in the sauce. You can get lost in the heaviness of going through some of this. And so it's just really important to make sure that you're doing something for you, something that feels meaningful, something that fills you back up. All right? That is for someone. I'm not sure who. Fear sharpens awareness. After this separation, awareness increases. Fear makes the mind notice details that might otherwise go unseen. It becomes easier to detect inconsistencies, hidden motives, subtle emotional shifts, possible threats, changing environments, risks, patterns. This heightened sensitivity is one of fear's gifts. It's not all bad. Without fear, people would overlook genuine danger. This message does not reject fear's ability to sharpen perception. Instead, it warns that this ability eventually becomes distorted. Awareness slowly changes into expectation. Instead of noticing danger when it exists, the mind begins expecting danger everywhere. It can overfunction, and that is why we need to try to bring it back into balance. It often came about during a time where there was genuine danger, and it was necessary to have that response. But oftentimes, it has outlived its purpose. It is still over functioning when it's not actually needed. And that's why we need to, they're saying that's why I needed to create this series, because for a number of us, for those who are going to watch it, we need to dial it back. It needs to get back to a healthier and sustainable level based on where we are in our journey now. Because I'm hearing for a lot of us, the danger has already passed. We've been through the worst. And we need to, again, bring it back into balance. I'll leave that there. The question changes from what is happening to what could go wrong. Eventually it becomes, what danger haven't I found yet? At this point, perception is no longer simply observing reality. It is searching for confirmation of fear. It is a self-feeding system, babies, and that's why we need to intervene. That is why I am creating this series. Thank you. Intervention is required. For some of us, our nervous systems are stuck in this framing, in this mindset, in this distorted perception. And that is why we need to intervene. Because we need to give the subconscious mind a new perspective to help it dial it back and help us discharge what needs to be discharged to get it back to baseline. Thank you. Fear changes how reality is interpreted. Fear rarely changes reality itself. It changes attention. Threats become highly visible. Safety becomes almost invisible. Neutral experiences disappear from awareness. Attention becomes selectively focused on everything that supports the belief that danger is everywhere. Because attention creates experience, reality begins feeling objectively more dangerous, even if the external world has changed very little. Fear gradually teaches the mind to confuse attention with truth. Fear distorts imagination. Imagination naturally exists to explore possibilities. Fear redirects imagination toward only one category of possibility. What if something terrible happens? Creativity becomes catastrophe planning. Curiosity becomes suspicion. Possibility becomes prediction. Eventually, imagination no longer creates futures. It rehearses disasters. And babies, they're saying your imagination is so powerful, right? Think about all the beautiful things that exist because somebody actually dared to imagine it and had the courage to actually take action on it, right? This example might be meaningful to someone, but Disney World was just a figment of the imagination at one point, right? And look at what that experience is like. It's immersive, and we don't have to talk about, the practicalities of it, right? Let's just stick with the imagination that actually started in Walt Disney's head, right? And like just the way that one thing that he actually brought into this experience and the lasting impact it has, right? We don't have to talk about how expensive it is and all that kind of stuff, right? Stay with me on this, stay focused, But they're just saying, like, if he didn't have the capacity to think that up and the tenacity to actually make it happen, because it was a massive undertaking at the time, think about, the lasting implications that might have had, you know, and they want you to be mindful. Again, I'm hearing energy economics. If you're so busy feeding catastrophe planning, catastrophe rehearsing, again, like, what energy do you have to divert to imagination, right? Your imagination is important. That's how a lot of us manifest. It starts in the imagination, right? Some of you may be big into visualization. And again, they're just saying, where do you actually want to invest your energy? Because some of you, they want you to really, if you're really struggling with that, they really want you to think about the number of times that the worst case scenario actually played out in your experience. And I want to be very clear, this is not to diminish what you've been through, right? Because we've all been through some very hard times in our experiences. But they're just saying, like, how many times did the worst case scenario that you thought was going to happen actually play out? They're saying it's just highly unlikely. Again, this really goes back to self-mastery. And this is really mastery over the mind, because they are point blank saying, like, this is the mind playing tricks on you. And it's not necessarily trying to, it's just this fear program just became overextended, it's overactive, and they're just saying, like, you didn't, because it hasn't been pulled back in where it actually belongs, it's just running rampant. And they're like, it's just not true. You just have this distorted program that is just looping, 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 running your show. And they're like, it just has no business doing that. So we just need to pull it back, rebalance it, and reframe it in the scheme of what is actually going on. So again, they're just saying, if you find yourself really rehearsing disasters, they want you to recognize what you're doing and take that pause, right? Interrupt that loop, right? And focus on what you actually want. Again, babies, big step into co-creator energy, right? Because where attention goes, energy flows. So they're saying, take that pause, recognize you're rehearsing disasters, and try to focus on the outcome you actually want to see, right? Because they're saying, even if you, it's funny, they're saying, even if you want to be audacious and shoot for the Hail Mary scenario, they're saying there's nothing wrong with that. You may not always get it, but they're saying, like, if you shoot for that, even if you don't 100% get that, it would still be a lot better and a lot better use of your energy to aim for that and end up someplace closer to that than to spend all this time on catastrophe planning, and rehearsing with that. Why? Because again, that's not actually, I'd like to believe that's not the outcome you actually want. So try to shift towards something that is closer to what you want. I'm not going to lie, the guides and the ancestors want me to tell you it is a lot easier for them to work with you if they don't have to spend so much time trying to block all this doomsday shit from actually coming in. Because again, where attention goes, energy flows. If you're constantly focusing on disaster rehearsal and that's where you're paying attention to, I don't think you understand. You do actually have the power to manifest that shit into your experience. And I know this from personal experience where I was having a really hard time with just everything I had going on. I'm not going to get into the details, but like, I was not in a good place on my journey. And my friend actually told me, she's like, honey, your guides need you to do something to get out of this line of thinking because you're such a powerful manifester. They are so preoccupied trying to hold off this shit that you're worried about from actually coming in. Like, I don't think you realize you are actually calling that shit in by focusing on that. And she was like, I don't care if you have to swing full fucking Delulu in the other direction. It doesn't matter. You got to get off this type of thinking. Because she was like, they can't even attempt at this point to bring in anything new or better because they're just trying to stop this shit from coming in. So she was like, you gotta change something. You gotta reprogram your mind. You gotta get the fuck out of this type of energy. All right. And I feel like somebody needs to hear you need to get out of this type of fucking energy too. All right. We've all been there. We all go through it. But once we know the impacts of that, again, they're just saying, please work with us, not against us. And you know what? When I swung to Lulu, you know, and I was like, I only get the best case scenarios and stuff, like, you know, things did get better. I'm not saying I actually got what I was asking for, but I swung it hard the other way. None of that shit actually came in, and we got out of that, and we stayed out of that. So that may be significant for someone too. Work with them. They just keep saying you are more powerful than you realize. Be very mindful of where your attention goes at this time. And yes, you can. You can overpower this fear. All right. Some of you may want to look into subliminals. I'm hearing subliminals. That may be helpful for you. They're also saying if you listen to this full series, like part 1, part 2, and part 3, that will actually help reprogram your subconscious mind as well. Again, those are options. All right, think about what works for you. Let's keep it moving. Fear creates false certainty. One of fear's strongest illusions is certainty. Its progression is remarkably consistent. First, this could happen. Then, this will probably happen. Then, this is almost certainly going to happen. Finally, the imagined future is emotionally experienced as though it has already occurred. Possibility becomes probability. Probability becomes certainty. Fear, therefore, causes people to suffer from futures that never actually arrive. Babies, your doomsday scenarios, your catastrophe rehearsing, they're saying if you're being honest with yourself, it almost never happens. It almost never happens, but the emotional toll and the energetic drain that it puts on you in the present moment is very real. Very real. And they want you to know you don't have to do that. You don't have to put yourself through that. Again, self-mastery, mastery over the mind. This is about once you know more, you can do better. And that's what they want you to do. Try to do better. They're not asking you to do a whole 180. They're just saying, just try to start moving toward better with this. They're saying your fear itself tends to be louder than what you're actually dealing with. Okay. Fear changes your relationship with time. Fear shifts attention away from the present. The present becomes merely the place where future dangers are anticipated. Instead of living today, the mind continuously rehearses tomorrow. It attempts to prepare for every possible painful outcome. The imagined future gradually becomes more emotionally real than present experience. Again, that is how you can physically be in the present, but mentally you could be in the future. And that is part of that separation, right? You are physically here, but you are mentally somewhere else. That is that separation. That is that fragmentation. They want you to stay focused on what is here, what is in your experience now, and really try to stay focused. This doesn't mean we don't plan at all for the future, but they're just saying, like, really try to stay focused on the present moment. If you stay focused on the present moment, eventually the future makes its way into the present moment and you can deal with, and they want you to trust you can deal with whatever presents itself in your experience in the present moment. And I have found that when fear gets loud, if I focus on the present moment, it becomes undeniable to me that in that present moment, everything is fine. And I feel like somebody needs to really hear that. If you think about focusing on what is in the present moment, you'll find in a lot of ways things are fine. And I don't know why they want me to tell you this, but they're just saying babies, so much can change in 24 hours. Like, so much can change. Again, I'm hearing miracles happen every day. And I'm not saying everyone's going to get a miracle every day, but they're just saying, like, things can shift down here. They absolutely can. And they want you to focus on what you can do in your present moment to shift things in a positive manner. And sometimes the best way to shift things in a positive manner is to just stop feeding some of the shit that you are currently feeding in your experience, right? Think about all the energy that you could reclaim and reallocate if you just stopped feeding these catastrophe scenarios, these doomsday scenarios. I don't know why, but I haven't actually watched any of the trailers for it. I don't know why, but I'm just seeing like the Avengers Doomsday, like just that like title in whatever fucking font that is. So maybe that's significant for someone. But yeah, I'm seeing Avengers Doomsday. I'm just gonna leave that. Maybe the color green is significant. Like I'm seeing Doctor Doom, or at least the character Doctor Doom. I think Robert Downey Jr. plays that character, so Robert Downey Jr. could be significant. Maybe you could be watching Avengers movies. Maybe you're really tuned into what's going on with Avengers Doomsday. Something about that could be significant. I'm going to leave that there. Fear seeks certainty. Uncertainty becomes emotionally painful. And babies, I'm not going to lie, I absolutely understand what that means. It's not an easy or a comfortable place to be. As uncertainty becomes harder to tolerate, certainty becomes increasingly attractive. People begin searching for authorities, belief systems, routines, rules, relationships, ideologies, or habits that promise complete safety or complete answers. Guidance slowly becomes dependence. Advice becomes obedience. Protection becomes control. The desire to eliminate uncertainty becomes stronger than the desire to understand reality. Fear therefore encourages surrendering independent judgment in exchange for the promise of security. And babies, they are saying resist this. We've already established in numerous topics that 100% certainty just cannot be guaranteed here. It's just not possible. That's not how any of this works. There is a reason why at every single video I do on these series, I tell you to trust your own discernment above all else. Do not give your power away. Do not give up your independent thinking. Trust what you feel. Trust what feels right. You have every right to change your mind down the road. Do not surrender your power to anyone or anything here. Stay curious. It is critical. It is so critical. Now, I'll always advocate for that. Always. Fear tests discernment. Fear presents an ongoing choice. There is an important difference between seeing danger and seeing only danger. Discernment means recognizing genuine threats without inventing additional ones. Fear constantly pressures a person to abandon discernment in favor of certainty. The challenge is not becoming blind to danger. It is remaining capable of distinguishing real threats from imagined ones. Say it again. It is remaining capable of distinguishing real threats from imagined ones. Babies, I am hearing what is your experience actually showing you in the present moment. For some of you, that will help you determine what is a real threat versus an imagined one. If it is not actually occurring in your experience right now, they're saying by default, it has to be an imagined one. And they really want you to question, do you need to feed that scenario that you don't want by paying more attention to it? I just keep hearing self-mastery. Babies, a lot of us can put down a lot of pain, a lot of fear. We can work through a lot of stuff if we can just start moving ourselves out of this line of thinking. There is a lot of power. There is a lot of energy that you can reclaim if you can start making this shift. It will be up to you, but that is the offer. That is the invitation. Fear confuses vigilance with control. Being alert can reduce surprise. It cannot eliminate uncertainty. Fear convinces people that if they think hard enough, worry long enough, prepare thoroughly enough, or stay tense enough, they can prevent pain altogether. This is an illusion. Some experiences cannot be prevented. They can only be lived through. Preparation has limits. Control has limits. Life remains uncertain regardless of how much fear attempts to manage it. And babies, they're just saying, if you're being really honest with yourself, if you think about what you've been through, you will recognize the fact that some things just couldn't have been prevented. And some of you may also get to a level where you realize Not necessarily in the moment, but later why you actually had to go through that experience, even if it was very painful. And you'll know if you're really maturing if you can get to a point where there is a part of you that can be grateful for going through that experience, learning what you did, and coming out stronger, better, wiser, and more discerning. And they're saying you don't have to appreciate how that event made you feel. Right? Because they're saying the way it made you feel was very real, and what you had to process was very real. But some of you will be grateful that you went through certain experiences because it got you to a point where you could really be able to help others, is what I'm hearing. Some of you are really being called into service and you're embracing that. And if that's you, good for you, babies. Some of you are starting to realize how your journey, even the hard parts, actually kind of pushed you into your purpose. And you're really starting to see the bigger picture. And they're saying if that resonates with you, the connections you're making are accurate. But I'm not going to lie, there's also a warning to not make that your identity, right? They want you to really focus on, as that understanding comes in, to really use that to alchemize anything that's left that is tied to that experience. Again, release the emotions, keep the wisdom, right? Fine tune your discernment and move forward. Because some of you know you're really getting ready to move on to better experiences. And there is an emphasis on just releasing what's no longer going to serve you in this new chapter. Again, self-mastery. They're saying it doesn't matter what part of this journey you're on, what level you're at, because we're all on different levels. We all have different paths. It's not a competition, and it certainly isn't a comparison. But they're just saying, I just feel like maybe some of us are really trying to self-master the levels we're at so we can move on to the next one. And this topic is part of what needs to be addressed to move on to the next one. There it is. All right. Fear changes the experience of time. Fear creates speed. Thoughts race. Emotions escalate quickly. Assumptions form instantly. Reactions become immediate. Everything begins feeling urgent. Every decision feels like it must happen immediately. Every problem appears like an emergency. Yet reality continues moving according to its own pace. Breathing continues. The heart continues beating. Nature continues changing gradually. Life itself follows rhythms much slower than anxious thinking. Fear lives in urgency. Reality often unfolds gradually. And babies, that's why they really want you to rebalance fear, because they're saying if you allow things to organically play out, you will get more information that will allow you to make better, more aligned decisions. When the fear kicks in and the fear gets loud, again, not only do we tend to fuel outcomes we actually don't want to see, but we can also make rash decisions that actually create complications down the road. Right? And a lot of that they're saying is tied to the fact that there is that uncertainty and it is uncomfortable. Again, there is a level of discipline and self-mastery that is coming into play here. And they just want you to really honor the pace of things. And one of the things is to just slow down. Yes, the fear is loud. But again, look at your experiences. Has the fear really genuinely been warranted? Again, I'm just hearing, how often has that catastrophe situation actually come to pass in your experience? Fear, that's why I had to talk about it. Fear produces automatic behavior. Fear activates survival before conscious thought. The body immediately prepares to avoid, escape, fight, defend, control. These reactions are valuable during genuine danger. But when repeated continuously, they become habits. Eventually, actions occur before conscious understanding. Behavior becomes automatic rather than intentional. It is that knee-jerk reaction to feel like you have control. And they're just saying a lot of times that's not even necessary. Fear attempts to stop change. Fear treats change as danger. Every ending becomes threatening. Every transition feels unsafe. I've definitely been there. Instead of allowing life to move naturally through beginnings, endings, growth, loss, and renewal, fear attempts to freeze reality. Remaining stuck begins feeling safer than moving forward. Yet life continues changing regardless. Change is one of the things that we can guarantee in this experience. Trying to stop change creates suffering because reality keeps moving, while fear attempts to remain still. Safety is therefore found not in stopping change, but in adapting to it. Again, babies, they want me to be very clear. There are changes coming. There are absolutely changes coming. I don't know what they are. They're going to be very different based on the individual person, but they're just saying it is inevitable. The change is coming. That's why being flexible is going to be the way forward. Being able to adapt with what happens. And they're just saying this is going to be one of those things they're not going to have me stop talking about. Because some of you are hearing this multiple times and they're saying that's intentional. But I also have to keep saying it again because there are going to be people who come in to these series at different points who also need to hear that message. Things are going to change. They're going to shift. They're going to grow. They're saying the more you can get in alignment with this type of thinking, this mindset shift, they're just saying that the easier it can be to handle this. Not to say everything's going to be easy, because I cannot guarantee that. But they're just saying it would allow things to progress smoother if you can better embrace this, embody this, and move forward with this. Fear makes temporary experiences feel permanent. Pain becomes, this is my life now. Loss becomes, nothing will ever improve. One failure becomes, I will always fail. Fear constantly attempts to make temporary experiences permanent. The deeper truth is that everything changes. Emotions, people, relationships, identity, and life all change. Fear's greatest illusion is permanence. Fear shrinks perspective. This is one of the deepest messages. Fear does not merely create strong emotion, it narrows perspective. Attention becomes smaller, possibilities become fewer, hope becomes harder to imagine. Nuance disappears, complexity disappears, alternative explanations disappear. Only threats remain visible. This narrowing produces psychological suffocation. This prison is created not only by circumstances, but by the shrinking number of possibilities the mind believes still exist. Again, babies, they're saying the fear can be really loud, but it often doesn't reflect what is actually possible. Part of getting out of looking at these catastrophes, these doomsday scenarios, actually opens up your ability to receive other possibilities, better outcomes, things that are not swinging so far toward one polarity. I'm hearing fight the good fight. If there's a battle they really want you to fight, it is this one. It is this one. Fear changes moral judgment. As perspective narrows, thinking becomes increasingly divided. Reality becomes categorized into simple opposites: safe or dangerous, friend or enemy, good or evil, innocent or guilty. Complex people become simplified into symbols of safety or threat. Nuance becomes uncomfortable. Fear therefore encourages harsh judgments because certainty feels safer than complexity. Fear spreads into relationships. Fear rarely remains internal. It changes relationships. Trust becomes difficult. Control replaces cooperation. Protection becomes possession. Advice becomes authority. Love becomes mixed with anxiety. People begin relating through self-protection instead of openness. Even kindness may become motivated primarily by fear of loss. Babies, they're bringing me back into a point I made in a couple of previous series. Relationships are mirrors. Some of you need to look at what your relationships are introducing into your experience, because those are things that you need to address within yourself. I'm going to leave it at that because I've already covered that more in depth in other series. I also know that's going to come up in some series after this too, so I'm just going to leave that there. Let's keep it moving. Fear can reshape identity. Initially, fear starts as, I feel afraid. Eventually, it becomes, I am a fearful person. Finally, it becomes, this is simply who I am. Fear gradually stops being an experience and becomes an identity. Protective behaviors become personality. Defensive habits become character. The person no longer merely experiences fear. They begin living through it. Fear feeds on what remains unfinished. Fear often persists because something remains unresolved, unfinished grief, forgiveness, acceptance, or endings. The mind remains alert because it continues searching for completion. Fear frequently weakens not because danger disappears, but because unresolved experiences are finally integrated. There is less separation when you integrate these things back together. So take this if it resonates, leave it if it doesn't. But some of you may want to set the intention, set the commands that you resolve the unresolved experiences and integrate them, really with the goal that fear cannot feed on it. Kind of I worded that poorly, I'm not gonna lie. I think you just if you're interested, you can just set the intention that anything unresolved that is feeding fear be resolved and integrated and released. It's tweak that how you want to. I'm gonna leave that there. Fear can become addictive, not because fear feels pleasant, because vigilance creates the illusion of preparedness. The mind begins believing, if I stop worrying, I will become unsafe. Relaxation begins feeling dangerous. Peace becomes unfamiliar. Constant tension starts feeling responsible. Fear convinces a person that worrying is what keeps disaster away. And babies, they are shouting at me that this is false. This is an illusion. They're saying worrying has never kept anything away. And if anything, it has only pulled it closer to actually appearing in your reality. That's why they're saying we have to talk about this. We have to set the record straight with this. We have to give the subconscious mind a different way of looking at things. They're just saying it is crucial. Crucial. Fear separates instinct from wisdom. Instinct reacts immediately. Wisdom reflects carefully. Both are necessary. The problem arises when instinct permanently replaces wisdom. The healthiest relationship is feel immediately, reflect patiently, respond deliberately, put that pause in place. What evidence does your experience support? Fear changes what life is about. Initially, fear protects life. Eventually, life becomes organized around fear. Every decision begins asking, will this keep me safe? Instead of, is this meaningful? Survival gradually replaces living. Safety replaces growth. Avoidance replaces exploration. Control replaces curiosity. The original purpose of fear is forgotten. And babies, they're saying that, yeah, you could go through life this way, but they just want you to ask yourself, is this really the way you want to live this experience by just protecting yourself from what may or may not actually happen. Because again, if you are spending so much time and energy into protection, what do you actually make room for? How do new things, better things find their way to you? There are always trade-offs with your energy. You do not have infinite energy. That's why they want you to get very clear on what are you willing to feed? What serves your greatest and highest good? And what do you just need to simply stop feeding and reclaiming so that you can reallocate it to what you actually want? Discipline, resilience, self-mastery. You can give me $1 for all of them every time I say it. Past, present, and future. Shit, throw parallel in there too. All right. Fear becomes self-reinforcing. Fear creates its own evidence. Ambiguous situations appear threatening. Neutral expressions seem hostile. Coincidences become proof. Small setbacks confirm larger fears. Every experience begins supporting the fearful worldview. Fear becomes a closed system that continually validates itself. And babies, this is exactly what we have to interrupt. I don't know why, but if you, they just, as soon as I said this, they just started screaming this. They're bringing me back to ambiguous situations appear threatening. Baby, just ask questions. If you're in an ambiguous situation, they're literally saying, just ask questions. Ask clarifying questions. That's the fastest way to get clarity. And if you're asking clarifying questions and you're getting ambiguous responses, that, they said, is actually what you need to pay attention to. And that is going to be important moving forward. If you don't understand things, ask questions. And don't be afraid to ask questions. Because they're saying anyone who is I don't know why, I'm just hearing anyone who is acting with integrity. Like anyone who is acting with integrity, with good intentions, will answer your clarifying questions. And if they don't know, they'll tell you they don't know. That's going to be significant for someone. Again, if you're in an ambiguous situation, ask clarifying questions. Fear can become corruption. If left unexamined, fear eventually stops protecting. It begins controlling. Instead of managing vulnerability, it seeks power. Instead of addressing pain, it searches for enemies. Yeah, I think I said that. Instead of managing vulnerability, it seeks power. Instead of creating safety, it justifies punishment. The original wound becomes projected onto other people. This is why relationships can become mirrors. Fear can therefore transform suffering into cruelty if it remains unconscious. Another reason why I have to do this series, because there are genuine implications of leaving this unaddressed. The alternative is meaning. The opposite of fear is not fearlessness. It is not certainty. It is not perfect confidence. The opposite is meaning. Meaning does not remove uncertainty. It changes the relationship to uncertainty. When life has purpose, uncertainty no longer needs to be eliminated. It becomes something that can be lived with. A meaningful life remains worthwhile even when outcomes cannot be guaranteed. And babies, they're just saying outcomes cannot be guaranteed. Again, this is what we're moving toward, is actually really rebalancing fear so that we can live with a certain level of uncertainty. Why? Because we have to, right? If certainty is not possible in this experience, we almost have no choice if we want to bring ourselves into balance, into wholeness, to do this whole discipline, resilience, self-mastery type of approach. You have to be able to hold a certain level of uncertainty without collapsing. It's just necessary. Adaptation is stronger than control. Life cannot be made completely safe. 100% certainty is just not possible. Instead, resilience comes from becoming adaptable. Healthy living means remaining flexible, making continual adjustments, learning rather than freezing, balancing competing needs, responding rather than reacting, growing instead of remaining rigid. Real stability comes from adaptation, not immobility. Healing is expansion. Nearly every destructive movement described above is a contraction. Narrower attention, imagination, identity, relationships, morality, possibilities, future, hope. Healing moves in the opposite direction. Perspective widens, imagination returns, relationships deepen, meaning expands, complexity becomes tolerable again, hope becomes visible, possibilities multiply, identity becomes larger than fear. The world is experienced as containing danger, beauty, uncertainty, pain, growth, loss, and joy, all at the same time. The deepest lesson: fear is not the enemy. Fear is a necessary part of being alive. Its purpose is to point toward what needs attention. Its mistake is believing that survival is life's highest purpose. Fear becomes destructive only when it never gives up control. The goal is therefore not to eliminate fear. The goal is to restore it to its proper place. Fear should be listened to because it often contains important information. It should not become the authority that defines reality, identity, relationships, values, or the future. A healthy mind allows fear to speak, learn from what it reveals, responds with discernment rather than panic, and then widens its perspective again. The final message is that fear is healthiest when it remains a messenger rather than a ruler. It protects life by drawing attention to genuine danger, but it was never meant to become the lens through which all of life is viewed. A full life is one in which awareness includes risk without being consumed by it, accepts uncertainty without surrendering judgment, allows change without resisting every ending, values meaning more than certainty, and remembers that danger is only one part of reality, not the definition of reality itself. End it there. All right, babies, that is all I have for part 2 on this series for fear. I will be back later this week with part 3, which will focus on what needs to be done, what changes we need to embody in order to, well, what changes do we need to make? What actions do we need to take to embody how to move through fear, how to rebalance it, and how to really move forward, really transmute. Definitely moving into more alchemy based topics, which I'm excited about. So feel free to tune in if that resonates with you. If it doesn't, that's totally fine. Just know the content will still be there if you change your mind later on. And yeah, take care of yourselves, beautiful beings. Until next time, bye.